Hey, this is Mr. Janes. Sorry I had to bail on you guys today. I had a meeting come to the last second that I have to go to during this period. So what we're going to do is kind of play today's lesson through a video. I'll ask either the substitute teacher or one of you guys to pause the video when I ask you to pause it, up on the big screen, up on the smartboard. And unfortunately, I don't have a touch screen with me right now, so I'm not going to be able to show my work. But we're going to start like we normally do with a warm-up. So, use any method to solve the following three equations. Any method you want. Could be taking square roots, factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula, whatever you want. But pause the video now, take about 5 minutes, okay, so pause the video for 5 minutes, and everyone try these problems on a scrap piece of paper on a warm-up or something like that. Please pause now. Okay, make sure that you pause because the answers are going to come up on the screen in 3, 2, 1... And here we have our answers and a few comments from me. For the first one, I would take square roots. I would start by dividing 2 on both sides, so that this side equals 4, and then take the square root, and the square root of 4 on that side will be 2, plus or minus, so x equals positive 2 or x equals negative 2. For this one, the numbers look pretty even. I can factor out a greatest common factor, and actually this is pretty factorable. So what I would do is I would factor out the greatest common factor of 3, and then continue to factor by grouping or however you can, and you get x should equal negative 3 or x equals 1. This last one, you could attempt to factor it, but it won't turn out as nicely as you'd think. And so I'm going to use the quadratic formula, and so I get x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 132 divided by 4. And you can simplify that. The square root of 132 simplifies to 2 square root 33. And since you have a 4 in the denominator and a 10, a negative 10, and a 2 in the numerator, you can simplify this to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 2. And that is the warm-up. If there are any questions, please pause the video here. Maybe someone can come up to the board and help the rest of the class out. Alright, let's take a quick look at the homework before we start the rest of class. Make sure you have this worksheet out. And let's go to the answer key. There it is. Pause the video here, and so everyone can check the answers. If there are any problems that people are unsure of, I'd like you to maybe talk about them. Someone can come to the board and help explain it. I unfortunately, like I said, don't have a touchscreen right now, so I can't do any of the work out. But pause the video here so you can see the answers. And if you'd like to see the problems, I'm going to scroll up in a second. So pause here for the answers. And here are the problems. Let's see, you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 about taking square roots. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8 all about factoring. We've got 9, 10, 11, 12 all about completing the square. We've got 13, 14, 15, 16 about the quadratic formula. And these last two, solving the equation by graphing, we haven't talked about this, but it's relatively straightforward. All you're doing to figure out the solution to this is I'm taking the left side of the equation and graphing it. That makes this parabola. And the right side of the equation and graphing it. That's what makes this line right here. And finding the intersection. So they intersect here and here, which means my solutions are x could equal negative 3 or x could equal 0. That's when these two lines, this x squared plus 3x plus 3, and the line of 3 intersect, right? That's the solution when they're equal to each other. The next one, okay, again, I've got the graph of x squared, this parabola right here, and negative x squared plus x plus 10, which is this one right here. And again, the solutions are at the intersection. So right here, so x could equal negative 2, or right here, and it's a little bit hard to see, but that's going to end up being about x equals 2.5, or we could call that x equals 5 over 2, as they have in the answer key. So again, pause the video if you need to go over any other homework problems, and we're going to move on to today's lesson. There's 2 things I'm going to want you to do today. The first one involves having this worksheet, 5 ways to solve a quadratic chart. So if you don't already have this, please pass this out now. What you're going to do is this. Every person in the class is going to choose a method, either taking square roots, factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula, or graphing. And actually, I'm going to do graphing myself to show you how this works. So pick one of these first four, and everyone's going to need a partner. So two people will pick each one. You may have to have a group of three, or maybe a single person if people are absent. For your method, you're going to list the steps. How do you do that method? When would you use that method? What are the advantages of having that method? And what are the disadvantages of having that method? I'll take you through an example of these in just a second. And then after you've taken about 5 minutes to fill in those things, you're going to share your method with the rest of the class. You'll become an expert on each of these steps, and then share that with the rest of the class. I'll leave a copy of a finished version that you can have after everyone has written down their own method and their own steps, pros, and cons to each step, so you can check your work. So at this point, hopefully everyone has chosen a partner, and so we've got a couple people doing square roots, a couple people that are going to present factoring, a couple people doing completing the square, and a couple people talking about the quadratic formula. And let me show you how this is done, and I'm going to do graphing. So to start, list the steps. So to solve, first you would graph both equations, and then you would find the points of intersection, just like we did on our homework. So I can go back to it. So it was right there, right? You would graph the equations first, and then you'd find the points of intersection, right? When would you try and graph to solve? Well, it's good with equations that are easy to graph, such as equations that are already in vertex form, because we know how to graph those, a constant, so that equal one number, or a linear function, something of the form y equals mx plus b. Like with this first one here, 17, right? You've got a quadratic, which might be a little hard to graph, but a linear equals 3, which is a nice straight line, so that's easy to graph, easy to find where those two graphs intersect. But the second one, negative x squared plus x plus 10, that's actually a harder one to graph, so I probably wouldn't recommend trying to solve number 18 by graphing. What are the advantages of graphing to solve? Well, you don't need to set the equation equals 0. You don't need to solve for anything, right? You can just graph both sides of the equal sign and see if they intersect. No need to do any algebraic manipulation. Also, it's very visual. You can see the whole graph. It's good for word problems. Let me show you what I mean. If I had some sort of problem where maybe someone threw a ball up in the air and we had a nice parabola, and you're trying to figure out when it got to a certain height, it might be nice to see what the parabola looked like, what the path of the ball, maybe a football or something, thrown up there would look like. So you got a better sense of what's going on in the word problem. As for the disadvantages, what can this not do? Well, graphing to solve is not very precise, right? You don't always get exact answers if your lines don't fall on grid marks. And some functions are hard to graph. Take a look at number 18 for instance. Negative x squared plus x plus 10, that's not going to be fun to graph. In addition, this point right here doesn't fall on a grid line, so I took a little bit of a guess in saying that it's probably x equals 2.5. Now, pause the video, break into your four pairs of four smaller groups or pairs for square roots, factoring, completing the square and quadratic formula. Take about 5 minutes to go through each of these boxes, and then maybe take about 2 minutes each to go up to the front of the room, present these to the class, and share what you found. Once you're done, I'll leave an answer key with the substitute so you can compare what you have to what I wrote down. Go ahead and try that now. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do today is to complete this worksheet, 5 ways to solve and graph study guide. We're going to have a quiz next time on the different methods of solving a quadratic equation and also graphing. So I just want to skip down to the back side to question 9. So make sure you have this if you don't pass it out now, and let's take a look. So when we look at something like number 9, sketch the graph of each function. I'm going to sketch that. There are a few important points that we can figure out here. We can figure out the y-intercepts by simply factoring this. We could figure out, the x-intercepts by factoring this. We can figure out the y-intercepts by looking at the last term here, positive 3. And we can figure out the vertex by doing the formula negative b over 2a. So go ahead, factor this, find the x-intercepts, do negative b over 2a, find the x-intercepts, do that for 9 and 10, and when you're done, unpause the video. So pause the video now and try doing 9 and 10, graphing each function, just 9 and 10. Pause now. And the answers will appear in 3, 2, 1. Here they are. For number 9, you should get x-intercepts at -1 and 3. Remember, that's when you set this equal to 0. Okay, so negative x squared plus 2x plus 3 equals 0. Factor and solve, you get your x-intercepts. The y-intercept is 3. That's just the c term here, plus 3. And then your vertex looks like it's at -1, 4. Remember, to get the x value, you do negative b over 2a. And then to get the y value of 4, you just plug back in. For number 10, looks like if we factor our x-intercepts are 0 and 2, and our y-intercept is also 0 because there's no plus c term here. It's just 0. As for our vertex, it is 1, -2. You find it the same way as you found the one before. Now, what about 11, 12, 13, 14? Well, these are in vertex form, and we've learned how to graph in vertex form a while ago, but it may have been some time, so a quick refresher. Here's our notes on vertex form that I took right off of the note sheet called 3 Forms of a Quadratic Equation that we took a few weeks ago. Here's vertex form. Y equals a, parentheses, x minus h squared plus k. A tells you the slope, h will tell you the x position of the vertex, and k will give you the y position of the vertex. Remembering that, here is what the graph will look like, right? We'll figure out what our vertex is first with h and k, and then we'll draw the rest of the graph using that slope. And since 11 is y equals x minus 2 squared plus 1, I know h will be 2, because it's x minus h. So h is 2, which means the x coordinate of my vertex is 2, and the y coordinate of my vertex is going to be 1. So I should have, let's see, right here being my vertex, and then since it's got a 1 out in front, okay, there's no number there, so it's going to be a coefficient of 1, that means that my initial slope is going to be 1. So here's my vertex, and then I'll draw a point over 1, up 1 here, and a point over 1, up 1 here, and then continue to draw my parabola. Try and pause the video here and see what that should look like on your paper. The answer will come up in 3, 2, 1. Okay, there's what the parabola should look like. Again, it's got our vertex at 2, 1, and our initial slope is over 1, up 1, draw a point, over 1, up 1, draw a point. As for number 12, let's see, my h is going to be -1, because normally it's x minus h, but this is a plus 1, which means h is -1, and my k is -2. So it means the vertex of my parabola is going to be at -1, -2. So right there. And the -3 out in front tells me that the initial slope of my parabola is going to be -3. So that means it's going to be facing downwards. So if I go over 1 and down 3, 1, 2, 3, plot a point right there. Then starting at the vertex, again, over 1, down 1, 2, 3, plot a point there. And then roughly sketch the parabola using those 3 points. Let's see what it actually looks like. Answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. There it is. Again, the vertex is at -1, -2. And I had a point right here, over 1, down 3, at what would be -2, -5, and over here at 0, -5. 13 and 14 are very similar. I want you to see if you can do 13 and 14 without any of my help. Pause the video here and try 13 and 14 yourself. When you're done, you can have a quick discussion, see if everyone in the class is on the same page, and then unpause the video to see if you got the answer right. The answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. Alright, there are the answers. See if your graphs match those. For the remainder of the class, I'd like you to do the front of this worksheet. Solve the following equations using any method. However, please use taking square roots, factoring, and completing the square and quadratic formula at least once on this page. Other than that, it's up to you what you choose. Please help each other out, and the answer key will be online. We'll have a quiz in this next time, and if possible, I'll see if I can pop back into the classroom and help you guys out as you're working. Have a great afternoon.